Looks like we are live. Perfect. So, I'm just going to make a few checks and then we will be good to go. All right, perfect. Can you all hear me? Can you hear me? I think you can. Even though no one's replying in the chat. All right. We will assume that everyone can hear me. Cool. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Ali. I'm a University of Florida honors graduate with a decade of experience working, training, and hiring in cybersecurity for 2 of the Forbes top 100 companies to work for. I'm a Batch 16 FES alumni, and I came to the US as an international student, went through the visa process, and now I am settled in Florida. So everything that I'm going to talk about in this information session is something that I've been through myself. Today, I'm going to talk about the application process to US colleges, how to stand out against your peers, and then I'm going to disclose some insider secrets that will guarantee that you stand out. We will be going over the process and requirements, the timeline, the cost of applying to schools, how to select schools, how to stand out using your extracurriculars and showcasing your achievements, how to leverage your diversity and your global perspective. And then we'll follow with Q&A in a live Zoom call, the link to which I will share later on. Okay? Good. So, without further ado, let's talk about application requirements. And by the way, the duration of this information session will be conducted in English, even though English is not my first language and neither is it yours, I believe, based on my viewers today. The reason I'm doing this is because you need to be comfortable with English. You need to be comfortable expressing yourself personally and in a business setting in English. English is the language of business globally. And if you're applying for graduate school in the US, then you should get comfortable with English. So, I'm going to jump straight into the application requirements. I'm going to try to cover as much as I can in the duration of this information session. What are the requirements to apply to graduate school in the United States? Number 1, test of English as a foreign language. You can either take a TOEFL or IELTS. If you're from a non-exempt country, Pakistan and a lot of countries in the East are non-exempt, which means they are not exempt from this requirement. You have to show them that you're able to communicate in English, just as I was saying. An exempt country is typically a country in the West or in Europe where you've spent at least a year that has the formal language as English. And most countries in the East do not have it, so you will have to take a TOEFL test. The TOEFL test is pretty simple, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. The second thing you need to make sure that you plan is the GRE and the GMAT. Most technical schools in the US accept GRE. So for the purpose of being technical, I would say GRE is probably more the way you should go. However, it depends from program to program. There are programs that accept both, although most business schools typically accept GMAT. But knowing that most of my audience today is technical, we will focus on GRE. GRE changes its scoring every couple of years. So if I tell you I got 1600, I'm talking about a very, very old time, maybe 10 years ago. Today, GRE is scored differently. So forget about the score. Remember the percentile. Your percentile rating for a GRE test needs to be high. In other words, after you take your GRE test, you will be given a percentile rating. That percentile rating needs to be above 75%. In other words, 75 percentile rating means that 75% of the students who took the exam with you are below you. You're in the top 25%. That's 75 percentile rating. GRE is typically valid for 5 years, which is something you need to keep in, need to make sure that you understand that GRE is valid for 5 years typically, which means that if you take your GRE today, you can use it for the next 5 years. Next, you're going to need official, sealed, and stamped, in other words, attested transcripts mailed to the Office of Admissions. These are official transcripts from your university. So if you're a GIK student, you will have to request these official transcripts to be delivered or submitted to the university that you're applying to. Now, this is a very important point because most students apply for graduate school when they're starting their final year, which means they only have 6 semesters to show for. You can score a 4.0 GPA in your 7th and 8th semester, but if you're applying for graduate school in the start of your final year, then you won't have the results for your 7th and 8th semester. So you'll have semesters 1 through 6 to showcase for graduate school. So you better score a good GPA then. Then you're going to need letters of recommendation. 2 minimum, 3 is typical. And these letters of recommendation also need to be submitted to the university directly. There's different ways to do this. It depends on the university policy. Maybe it could be submitting it online or emailing. Some might even require that you mail it, but I think a lot of universities do it online now. Now, this is an important point. Most students wake up at the last minute and realize that they have to apply for graduate school because everyone else is doing it. And now they're thinking which professor they should go to for a letter of recommendation. Look, if you're in a batch of 300 students and you've never really met or spoken to your professor, he or she is not going to know who you are. So you can't just show up to them and say, I need a letter of recommendation. The response you will get is, do I know you? You don't want to be in that position, obviously. So you need to create a rapport. You need to build a relationship and a network with your faculty early on. And what's the best way to network with your faculty? Be a good student. That's the best way to stand out, right? I mean, you're not going to sit there with a very low grade and ask for a letter of recommendation. So you have to keep this in mind. 3 letters of recommendation, ideally in a subject that you scored a very good grade in. Just make sure that you get that. Next, you're going to need a resume. And this is basically helping you showcase everything that you've done, your internships, your work experience, your volunteer experience. And one thing I'm going to mention is, this process may be long, but don't think of it as a very painful process that is meant to screw you over. It's not supposed to do that. This process is supposed to enable you to show everything that you are to these colleges. In other words, think of this as a chance. Every step here is a chance for you to show how good you are to these colleges. Next, you're going to need an academic statement of purpose. This is different from a personal statement. Again, a personal statement and an academic statement of purpose are 2 different things. Some colleges require both, some require one. The difference is, and you'll see the requirements on the specific college that you apply to, the difference is that the academic statement of purpose, which is it's basically an essay of about 400 to 600 words. It talks about why you're applying to the specific program, why you're a good candidate for that specific field of study, how this program aligns with your future goals. You're basically trying to tell the admission committee that you understand your academic objectives. And you're going to use this to help them determine that you're a good match for the program that you're applying for. The personal statement is, as the name suggests, very personal. In a personal statement, you're creating a sense of yourself. Who are you? Why should they care about you? What is your personal background and experience that influence your decision to pursue a higher education? And we're going to jump a little bit deeper into that later on. But we'll continue for now. You may or may not need an interview. This is a requirement that I've seen build up more in the recent years. More of a reason why you should be comfortable speaking in English. Because when you go for an interview, everything on paper should be represented by who you are and how you talk and how you carry a conversation. Finally, you may require a financial statement showcasing that you have at least a certain amount of money to get you through your maybe first semester. These requirements may vary per college, so you might want to check that out. And then eventually, once you get your acceptance, then you're going to apply for an F1 visa, assuming you're not an American citizen, which is another process in itself. So I'm going to summarize this again. TOEFL, establishing your English proficiency. GRE or GMAT, official sealed transcripts, letters of recommendation, resume, academic statement of purpose, personal statement, maybe an interview, maybe a financial statement, but those things come later. If you're getting an acceptance for an interview, it means they really like you, and now they just want to make sure you're not fake. Okay? Before we move on to the next subject, I'm just going to quickly check YouTube to make sure everything is good and see if there's any comments. Okay, so you would like to... So, Umar Piracha asks if I'm speaking only for admissions in the US. That is right. So this podcast, as the title suggests, is only for US admissions. I actually have a couple of colleagues and friends who have made really good success in Europe, and I'm going to be bringing them on at a later time to discuss admissions specific to Europe. Hasso says, tell us a little bit about yourself. I will gladly do that. I will continue going in the momentum that we're going so that I don't bore anyone else, and I will speak to that subject a little bit towards the end. So let's move forward. We talked about requirements, which is step number 1. What about timeline? Timeline is extremely important because what happens is students at the end of their 4th year, when the graduation nears them, they start thinking about, well, what about life after college? What should I do? Should I apply for a job? Should I? No, it's already too late by that point. You have to plan ahead. Here's the timeline that might surprise you. The latest that you have to get everything, all of those requirements fulfilled, is January 1st for international students. That is the latest that you should internally think about getting all of that stuff done and sent to these colleges. Okay, January 1st. What does that mean? That means that in the 3rd year, at the end of the 3rd year, it's ideal that you already have started preparing for your GRE, GMAT, your TOEFL, or you've already taken the test. Because remember, if you don't score a result that you like, you could retake the test. That comes with a little bit of additional information that you may want to look at online, but that is something that you could do if you're not very happy with the scores. However, I wouldn't suggest that you keep taking these tests. I would say do it once and do it right. So January 1 is the deadline, typically for schools as an international student, which means you have to plan way in advance. January 1 is the latest that you should plan for. Typically, colleges start taking admissions as early as November of the year before. And when these admissions are rolling, it means that the earlier you get your application in, the better your chances are of getting an admission. Because rolling admission means that they will look at your profile, they will look at your resume, and then as soon as they realize you're a good candidate, they will send you an acceptance. They will send you an acceptance letter. So at the end of January, they've already sent out a couple of acceptance letters. So now your probability of getting in that same school is lower because there's lower seats remaining for you to get into that school. So this is very important. For a school that does rolling admissions, you need to be the first one who applies there and maximize your chances. Why not? This is the easiest way to maximize your chances of getting into graduate school. All right? So, in other words, if you're entering your final year right now, and your classes start in September, ideally, if you really want to have everything set up to leave Pakistan and enter the US as a graduate student right after you graduate, you should probably have everything close to getting done. I don't mean to stress you out by saying that, but that is a reality check. That is a truth bomb. So write that down. Now, GRE is scheduled about every 2 months, although it's different from country to country and it's different from city to city. So you will have to go to the ets.org website and check how often GRE is scheduled. TOEFL is scheduled more often. I've seen on ets.org website for Pakistan, it was maybe weekly in the heavy season of fall. But again, these schedules change, so you have to go and look at it for yourself. Now, GRE and TOEFL should be done by the end of the third year, ideally. I mean, I did it later, so if you haven't, that's okay. But I'm just saying, ideal scenario. The GPA of 3 years will count when you apply at the end of your third year, or the beginning of your fourth year. The recommendations need to be obtained early on. You need to have an ongoing rapport with your professors. You cannot approach them last minute. Your resume should be tailored the day you start university. If you're smart and if you're really forward thinking, you need to start building your resume the day that you start university. Why? Because your resume is not something that you can just cram together overnight and ask a couple of friends, you know, hey, what do you have in your resume? Let me put that same thing down. No, we're trying to make you stand out. Your experiences are particular to you. You are a unique individual. So grow your personality, whatever it is that you need in your resume. Keep a living, dynamic document. Your resume is a dynamic document. It is not a static document. It does not stay there and then rest and collect dust. It is updated every couple of months. All right, so we covered timeline, we covered requirements. Now we're going to move to cost of applications. Applying to colleges in the US is not exactly cheap, but it is worth it. So here are the costs that you can expect when you apply to colleges in the US for your master's. First, the university has its own application fee. This could be anywhere between $90 and $150 US. Then you have to apply for TOEFL, right? You have to take the TOEFL exam. That is anywhere between $180 and $325 depending on what country you're in. For Pakistan, as of yesterday, for the internet-based testing, it is $205 US. For GRE, it's $220. Unless if you're from China, then you'll be paying $231. But for Pakistan, it is $220. Again, these rates may change, so don't take my word for it. Go to the ETS website and see for yourself. Transcripts. I actually looked this up on the GIK University website. Transcripts are $10 for the first transcript, $8 for every following transcript. And I believe GIK gives you the option to courier the transcript themselves for $20 per courier. So all in all, we're looking at, let's say, $100 for university, $200 for TOEFL, say $220 for GRE. So we're about, let's see, transcripts. Well, here's the thing, TOEFL and GRE you will only take once, right? So that's not a recurring cost. So you pay that $200, you pay the $200 for GRE and TOEFL, that's about $425 there. That's not a recurring fee. Once you take the exam, you're good to go for a couple of years. As far as the university application fee is concerned, it's $100, $90 to $150 per college. Now, I will say there are fee waivers and there are scholarships, and that is a whole other subject that I will not be discussing today. That will be a separate session because that is a very deep subject. There are waivers for these application fees to the universities. All right, we covered cost. Let's move on to how you select the right schools to apply. What does everyone do? When you're trying to apply for schools, what does everyone do? Everybody goes to Google and says top school to apply for. That's fine, but that's not really the way to figure out what school is best for you. Let me give you some insider secrets, okay? First, selecting the right school to apply for you is not just ranking. It's a combination of ranking, perception, very importantly, perception, and again, very importantly, alumni placement. Now let's go into each of these topics. Ranking. Ranking could be national ranking, it could be world ranking, it could be program-based ranking. So if you're going to a school for industrial engineering, let's say, and their program ranking says that they're #1 in the US, but their school ranking is maybe number 20 in the US. It's something to think about. #1 in the US in their program means they're very good and everybody's going to know about them. Versus, let's say, the program ranking is way down because that school is known for business. And because of its business ranking, the overall ranking of the school goes higher. You get my point. So you have to consider the average of national ranking, world ranking, and program-based ranking. And if you go to usnews.com or forbes.com, you can filter out these ranking based on programs, based on other filters, and you can find the best way to get the average out there. Second is perception. What do you mean? What does that mean, perception, right? Look, I'll tell you this. The US is very big on sports, especially football. And when I say football, I'm not talking about soccer. I'm talking about what you would regard as rugby. The British rugby or the American football. America is huge on that. So there are schools that have really good football teams that are so popular that everybody knows about that school, every alumni knows about that school, every employer knows about that school, and the first topic they'll talk to you about is, oh yeah, how's the football team doing? And that was the case with me, actually, with University of Florida. The Gators is and was a very good team, and this is perception. Everybody knows about certain colleges because of how good their sports teams are. So you need to consider that human element as well, because you will be applying and talking to human beings, and as soon as they see your college, it rings a bell. Finally, placement. How do you select the right school based on placement? What I mean by placement is, look at your alumni. Where are they? What schools are they going to? Maybe they've created a very good impression of your school specifically. Maybe the job that you want hires people from a very specific school. Maybe they've got like a track record. Maybe they've got this relationship with that school. It does exist. And so you need to see where all your alumni in your specific field go to and why, and what jobs they're taking. So at the end of the day, you're not just looking at rankings. If you're smart, you're looking at rankings, perception, and placement. All right, before we go to the next topic, actually this topic's not over, but I'm going to take a quick break, look at the chat again. Let's see what we have going on here. Okay, chat looks quiet. Perfect. All right, so let's say you've made up your mind. Okay, you've identified which universities you want to go to based on placement, perception, and ranking. Okay, now you've got a list. Now let's say that list is 6 colleges. That list is 20 colleges. What's wrong with that list right off the bat? I can tell you what's wrong with that list without even looking at it. What's wrong with the list is that you selected the top maybe 10 schools. That's great. That's also wishful thinking. I'm saying be confident in yourself. That's really good. That's good. Be confident in yourself, but always have a backup plan. So here's what I would tell you to do. This is something my brother told me when I was applying for graduate school, and I think it works perfectly. Take your list of colleges that you've identified and divide them into 3. The first category should be the wow schools. This would be your Ivy League schools, top-ranked schools, just no-brainers. Cornell, Ivy League, Harvard, all that good stuff. It would be awesome if you got in. Okay. The second section should be pretty reasonable schools. These are the schools where you will leverage more on perception and placement, not necessarily ranking. These are not your Harvards or your Ivy Leagues, but they are very reasonable schools. They're very good schools, and a lot of state colleges come under this category. For example, University of Florida. This is what I did. I went to University of Florida. It's a very good state school. Everybody in Florida knows about it. It's not Harvard, it's not Cornell, but it's pretty good. Okay? So that's your second category. The third one is, of course I'll get in. That's the third category. That's your backup plan. These are the mid-tier schools. These are the schools where you just want to get into the US, you just want to get your visa, you want to get your foot in the door. And the idea here is once you get in, you're going to try as hard as you can to score a 4.0 GPA in your first semester, and you're going to transfer out to a better school. That's the purpose of this last tier. So I wouldn't recommend that you apply for all Ivy League schools. I would recommend that you break this down and you be smart about it. All right. Next, we're going to talk about showcasing your extracurricular activities and achievements. Showcasing your extracurriculars feeds into your academic statement of purpose. Remember how I discussed there's a difference between academic statement of purpose and personal statement. Your extracurricular activities and achievements may lean a little bit more towards your academic statement of purpose. In other words, think about all your experience that relates to or applies to a skill that will help you grow in your career or in your field of study. Okay? This could also include volunteer work. This could also include competitions that you've organized, and all of the extracurriculars that you think of could go into this category. What I've noticed is not an issue with the amount of extracurriculars that a lot of students do, but with how they're presenting. You need to be clear. You need to quantify what you did. You need to specify your role. You need to be concise. You need to hit keywords. You need to add your awards and recognitions. And you need to show consistency. You can't have one extracurricular in your first year and then have nothing for 3 years and then have one more in your fourth year. Show the admissions committee that you are a well-rounded individual who works every year to grow his or her personality and round it up. Okay. Now, I talked about being clear, concise, and quantifying. So let's take an example. I'm going to move my screen here, and we will do an example right now. Okay. Just pull out this notepad. Let's see. I actually put something down here for you guys, so give me a minute. Okay, here's a good example. Here's a good example for you. Okay. I don't know if you can see my screen, but I'm just going to read this out to you. In 2020, I volunteered in local schools to teach young children about technology and to educate them in how to be successful. We made a big impact, and this was a subject of much talk in my community. Now, this is taken out of a academic statement of purpose. So what do you think? Is it clear, concise? Is it good? No. No, it sucks. Here's another way to say the same thing. Okay, give me a minute. And I just wrote this down before I went live, so I'm going to share this here. All right. Now I'm saying the same thing, but I'm adding a quantity to it. I'm being more clear. I'm specifying my role. I'm hitting keywords. I'm adding an award and a recognition. What did I do here? I'm going to read it out to you. In 2020, I interviewed and assembled a team of nationwide tech entrepreneurs and college valedictorians to educate over 500 high school students on the basics of computer architecture and Python coding, gaining national recognition on whatever, PTV, Pakistan Television Network. Okay, look, we might make fun of PTV, but as far as the US is concerned, this is a national network, okay? But you get my point. So what a world of difference this makes. The first one is quite plain and quite boring. It doesn't really say much. Everybody has stuff like this on their essay. The second reflects much better. All right. All right, so we'll go back to comments just real quick. Let's see. What about language requirements? Can we get university letter and show as proof of language? Unfortunately not. I know that we study in English. In Pakistan we study in English, but that's not good enough for them. They don't trust that. Pakistan is not exempt from the English language requirement. So no, unfortunately you cannot. Maybe there's a college out there that accepts it, but most major colleges do not. That is just based on my research, so feel free to do your own. All right, so we talked about showcasing your extracurricular activities and achievements. And guys, please, and I'll say this, no disrespect to anyone. Student societies are not your end-all, be-all for volunteer activities. In fact, if you're going to waste 7 hours building posters and charts and doing publicity work at the cafe until 2 a.m. at night, I can think of other activities that would give you a better return on investment of your time. It's the world of the internet. You can find anything out there that directly relates to the experience, directly relates to the work that you're going to be doing, directly relates to the program you're going to be applying for. And I'm sorry to say that a lot of the student societies out there, they just don't have that ROI. So if it's fun for you to be a part of, I don't know, whatever student societies are out there, go for it. Only if you think it's fun. But if you're doing it because you think it's gonna be world changing for you, it's not going to be world changing for you. Far from it. Okay. Look for better volunteer activities. Look for more volunteer activities. Look for other extracurriculars that other people aren't doing. Look for things with a higher ROI. Put stuff in your resume that you can quantify. Okay. All right. Now, if you're a coordinator of a society, then yes, that does count under leadership. But I'm just saying, there may be other activities out there that will give you a better ROI. All right, let's leave it at that. So, now let's talk about leveraging your diversity and global perspective. This feeds directly into your personal statement. The diversity and global perspective is something that you can leverage, especially coming from Pakistan or from a lot of countries in the East, because a lot of countries in the East are developing, and you always have a story. You have a story that makes you unique and that is heartwarming, or that could be made heartwarming. Look, it's 2023, and everyone's all about diversity and being politically correct and affirmative action and all that good stuff, right? So use it to your advantage. Your chance to shine as an individual with unique experience comes from being a diverse and a global individual. I know my camera went out, but I'm going to continue talking. And after this topic, when I go into Q&A, I'll go switch off the camera while you think of questions, because this is the last subject. So when you talk about leveraging diversity and global perspective, think about any disability that you overcame. Think about underrepresented ethnic, racial, cultural backgrounds that you come from. Think about maybe your housing or your food insecurity. Think about economic instability. Pakistan has no shortage of economic instability. I think we can all agree on that. So these are things that you can use to your advantage to paint your story about how you come from a very diverse background with a different perspective, with you haven't had everything handed to you. It's been tough, it's been difficult. Talk about those things, leverage that information to make yourself stand out against not just your peers, but applicants from other countries in the world. All right, so now I'm going to go over some final Q&A, some final bits, and then we'll do a live Zoom session if there are people who want to do a Zoom session. So before I do that, I'm just gonna summarize real quick. We talked about requirements, we talked about timeline, we talked about cost of applications, we talked about how to select the right school, we talked about showcasing your extracurricular activities and achievements, we talked about leveraging your diversity and global perspective. Okay? I'm going to reset the camera and I'll be right back. All right, I am back. I'm going to reset my camera. I think it's overheating or something. We will fix it. It's good. All right, so Hassa wanted me to talk about myself. So while you guys think about questions to ask me, if there are any questions, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm also going to work on sharing a link to this Zoom meeting with you. I'm going to open up the Zoom meeting real quick. And we will join with the computer audio. Okay. I'm going to paste the link to this meeting in the YouTube chat. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to join me on Zoom. I will take you live and I will answer any questions, preferably about the topic we discussed, but honestly, you can ask me whatever you want. Just no trolling. So a little bit about myself. So I am a Batch 16 Faculty of Engineering Science graduate. I graduated GIK. I did not apply for graduate school in my third year, or at the end of third year or start of fourth year. I was a little bit late, so I applied for graduate school around the end of fourth year. So I had a couple of months in between where I was sorting out visa stuff, and then I got a couple of acceptances. University of Florida was the best one for me at the time. I got my Master's of Science in Information Systems and Operations Management with focus in supply chain, actually. But I moved into cybersecurity when I got a job right out of graduation at Deloitte Consulting, where I worked as a technology risk consultant for 2 years, got promoted to senior consultant, worked as a technology risk senior consultant nationwide at Deloitte, and then I moved to PricewaterhouseCoopers. I got promoted to manager. I've worked in IT internal audit. I've worked in application readiness security. I've hired every year. I've trained other individuals at my firm on a national level, and I occasionally go to other colleges in the US to give talks. So that's a little bit about myself and my professional path. I'm happy to talk more. I can talk about myself all you want, but that's not what I'm here for today. I'm here to talk about what can make you guys successful. So again, happy to answer any questions. If you do join the Zoom link, you will be put into the waiting room, and I'm going to be notified. And then I'll let you in, and then we can talk. All right. So we have another question from Umar Piracha. Can you compare US universities to the rest of the Western world and lifestyle challenges, and why to apply to the US? Look, guys, maybe I'm biased, but I think that the US is certainly the land of opportunity. I think the US is the best country in the world as far as your return on investment goes, as far as your lifestyle goes, as far as your standard of living goes. It's everywhere. You see it everywhere. Things are bigger. Cars are bigger. Engines are bigger. Serving sizes are bigger. People are more generous. It's a consumer market. If you work hard, you don't have to jump through a million hoops. Things are more simple. Things are easy. Things are automated. And how do I compare this with the rest of the Western world? Well, in my limited experience of England, for example, I guess I could compare it with England. I think England is more expensive, has less opportunity. I think that England is there's let's say US attracts talent from all across the world to make huge leaps in advanced technology and development. Every cutting edge sector is basically being led by the US. And I think that's one of the major differences, whether it is whether it's research on laser radars that my brother works on, or whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's conferences. It's just a melting pot for talent across the world. I'm not saying that you cannot make a good life or even a better life in other countries. All I'm saying is that your probability of success and your return on investment in the US, per my observation, is a little bit higher than other countries in the West. I think, for example, I was talking about UK. I think UK is a little bit smaller. I think the roads are smaller, the cars are smaller, things are more expensive. People are less generous, typically, with consumerism and sales and stuff like that. It's just a different lifestyle. So, yeah, that's my perspective of it. Now, as far as challenges, look, you will face challenges. It's not going to be easy, okay? And I was going to get to some of the final points. It's not going to be easy. This is not a walk in the park. But all I'm saying is if you work hard, you have a likely chance of success in the US. The visa process is not simple. It's not easy. But it works. It works. If you keep trying, it works. Look, you have to do this for yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. You have two options. You suffer now, you work hard, or you suffer later by not working today and suffering later in life. So that's what I would say. A few other closing remarks I would say is, give yourself a grace period and a buffer when it comes to planning out your timeline. Do not copy others. Don't go to your roommate and say, hey man, what did you put in your personal statement? Let me just copy paste it and send it over. Yeah, we're both applying to the same school. You don't think that someone in the admissions committee will notice that 5 guys from GIK have the exact same personal statement, just worded differently? Come on, guys. Think for yourself. Download the calendar of deadlines from universities, print it out, stick it on your wall, and hold yourself accountable to these timelines. Don't get beat down by the application process. Add your human element to it. Be unique. Again, the application process is not meant to beat you down, although it might feel like it. That's not the idea of the application process. The idea of the application process is to give you an opportunity to showcase your skills in every aspect. That's why there's so much that you could submit to them. Let's say if the application was based on just an entrance test or just your GPA, well then you wouldn't be attracting the best talent of the world, would you? You wouldn't know how well you speak, you wouldn't know how well your personality is outside of, being a good nerd. You wouldn't have a resume, you wouldn't have experience. Like, all these things factor into your admission, and I think it's a good thing. Okay. Saad is saying there's an echo issue back here. I'm sorry. I don't know why there's an echo issue. Oh, there are 2 people who joined me in the waiting room. I'm sorry if you still see an echo, then I apologize. I'm not sure why it's happening. Again, I'm going to close by saying, before I take the 2 people in the waiting list, I'm going to say scholarships is a big subject, and I know a lot of students have reached out to me already asking about scholarships, but it is not a subject that I'm going to discuss today because I want to keep this brief and to the point and focus specifically on the application process. Scholarships is a whole nother subject. So I will cover it in the future, but not today. All right. Now I'm going to take a few questions. Okay. Listen, Whoever is coming in for questions, mute your YouTube. Mute your YouTube because there is a delay, and there is a delay. I don't want you to get confused with the delay. So when you go into this conversation, when you log in through Zoom, mute your YouTube. Okay? All right, give me 1 second to move this over to desktop. All right. I don't know who's first. I would assume it's Saeed because you're on number 1, so we'll admit Saeed. It's stuck on joining. Saeed, can you hear me? Saeed, you're muted.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. How can I help you, sir? What is your question?
I just want to ask that I'm now second year student at GT, but I want to apply for Grad. So will the application process will be the same as the one applied after the graduation or not?
So if I understand the question correctly, you are currently a second year student at GIK. You do not want to currently apply for graduate school. You want to graduate and then apply for master's. Is that right? And you want to know if it would be any different?
No, I'm asking for a U-Grad program.
What is U-Grad?
So it's like an exchange program.
Okay.
And then the student just go to the US just a semester.
Okay. I understand. An exchange program has a different list of requirements. Some of what we discussed today will apply, but not everything that we discussed today will apply. I believe that in ways an exchange program requirement might be a little bit different. I don't know exactly what the exchange requirements are, so unfortunately, I would hate to answer you something and not be accurate about it. I can do some research and reach out to you afterwards and talk about exchange programs, but at this point, I don't have the up-to-date information on how exchange program applications are different from the regular Masters of Science. Okay, Saeed? Feel free to reach out to me, and we'll talk about this later. Anything else?
No, that was from me.
All right, perfect. I'll let you drop off then.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we're gonna let Saeed go. Oh, no, I'm not trying to report you. Sorry, man. Don't report. Okay. Who's next? So we'll take Maliha. I think you're next. I'm taking Maliha. Please mute your YouTube. I know my camera's off. It's overheating. I'm sorry. I'll turn it on in a bit. Maliha, how can I help you? Can you hear me, Maliha? Okay. I don't know where Maliha is. Maybe this is a duplicate, so I'm gonna admit Maliha again. All right, Maliha, can you hear me? Okay, Maliha, could you increase the volume of your microphone, or could you get closer to your microphone, please? It's very hard to hear you. Barely, but it's okay. Go ahead and ask your question. I will repeat it for the audience.
Okay. So I have a question. This is about youth scholarship. Okay. I want to know, I have done my bachelor's and master's from Pakistan, and I'm currently doing my PhD from CBS. Is there any way that my credit hours can be transferred to the US university in a way that I don't have to repeat those courses again.
Absolutely.
And, okay.
I'll let you finish your question. Was there more?
Okay, and yes, and I also want to know whether I'm eligible for a scholarship as well, because I am halfway done to my PhD, and it's like halfway still left. I'm left with few courses and my thesis. But I've heard that some of my colleagues in the past were able to finish their degree uh, by applying on scholarship for PhD students specifically, and at the end of the degree they were awarded the PhD from a foreign university with a better ranking, and they were able to do everything because it was fully funded by the university program or by government funding or third party.
Right. Okay. So Maliha, I'm going to summarize your question real quick. So in summary, it looks like you've already completed your master's from Pakistan. You're currently a PhD student. You're almost halfway through, and you're curious to see if your credits would be transferred to a U.S. college so that you could be awarded a PhD degree from the United States instead of Pakistan.
Exactly.
Right. So what I will say is you can certainly transfer credits from Pakistan to the U.S., but it would depend on the course. It would depend on what the university that you're applying to thinks about that course. It's kind of like a very tailored, customized approach. I've seen people do it, but I will say this one thing though. When it's awarding a PhD, it might be a little bit tricky. I see Umar Piracha in the participants, and he is an established PhD who got his PhD at a high-ranking program in University of Central Florida. So I will let him answer. Maybe I'll bring him in next about whether you could be awarded a PhD degree from the U.S. based on some of your coursework in Pakistan. But as far as strictly transferring credits is concerned, I do believe it's possible. They might not transfer 100% of your credits, but they could certainly transfer a few of the courses that you can establish are equivalent to the courses that you would do in the U.S. I've seen people transfer their credits in masters halfway through and go to a U.S. school and get a U.S. degree. It may not always be one-to-one. It may not always be flawless. You may still end up taking some of those same courses again, but it does save you some time, some effort, some money. However, PhD is a little bit different, and I don't want to comment on something that I personally haven't done. I have not done it. I've not had a PhD. So stay tuned. I'm going to bring in Umar, and he may be able to answer your question about this in more detail. Does that work for you?
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for your answer.
You're welcome. I'll let you hang up. Okay? Okay, so Umar was here, but I think he is offline right now. So, Maliha, what I'm going to do is, if you can reach out to me afterwards, I will consult Umar, and I'll respond to you. Because I don't see him in the waiting room anymore. Actually, he is in the waiting room. Yeah, I'll just bring him in, and then I'll bring Hassan, and then we'll call this a wrap. All right, Maliha, I'll let you go. Thank you. Okay, I'm bringing in Umar. Hello, Mr. Umar. How do you do?
Hey, can you hear me well?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, so I think I can respond to one of the earlier questions from, I think, Maliha, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'll repeat the question. I think the question was that she's enrolled for a PhD program in Pakistan, and she's wondering if she can transfer halfway through into a program in the US for the same PhD. Here's a bunch of initial thoughts. First of all, it's a really exciting thought, so I think it's really good that she's thinking like that. because I think the experience in the US would be far superior. Generally, I think, just because there's so many resources there. Just a couple of things to keep in mind. It would strongly depend on what university you're trying to transfer to. And you would still have to get into the university based on whatever their standard PhD admission process is and what the requirements are. So you would have to still satisfy all of those requirements, just like a standard PhD applicant or for the graduate school. Now, there are cases, this is the interesting part, there are cases where if the professor in the US is familiar and impressed with your research work, or if it's a collaborator in a research program that you both may be working together, then that professor might say, hey, you know what, even if you don't have the same GPA or the best GPA or whatever other GRE score or anything else, I'm familiar with your research work, and that is quite stellar. So I am the professor, this is my research group, I pick your application, I want you in my group. And that is all it is to it. The professors have a lot of control in terms of which students they want to hire for the PhD program. So if you go directly to a professor and the professor says, I want this student, you're in. Question is, how do you connect with a professor in the US and impress them with your research? And if it's a collaborator, your Pakistani professor might be very upset because maybe he doesn't want to lose the student, right? So it gets really tricky politically as well. So that's what I'm going to say on that. I think if you have any further questions, feel free to maybe submit them to Ali, and he can send them my way, and I'll be happy to comment further. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Umar. And just for the record, Umar is a double master's dual major graduate from GIK Batch 8 FES, double master's from the US, University of Central Florida and University of Southern California, and a PhD. He's currently working I don't know if I'm able, I'll let you give the details, Umar. That's your thunder.
Well, yeah, I'm a senior principal engineer. I work for a self-driving car company in the US. I have my PhDs on LiDARs, laser radar. I'm from FES, GIK, Batch 8. And I think the only thing I would add is that I've also been adjunct faculty at the University of Central Florida, where I was teaching college classes. So I also have that academic experience as well as applying for grad school so many times for all my master's and PhD degrees. And then hiring, interviewing in the industry and things like that. So that's where my advice is coming from. But it's really important to know where you're getting your advice from everybody. If you ask the parents, as sincere as they are, they won't be able to give you accurate advice if they don't have the right experience, right? So you need to make sure you take advice in general in life, and also specifically for grad school applications, from people who are actually sincere to you and who have the right accurate information. So I think it's important for Ali, as well as for myself, to introduce ourselves and tell us, like, hey, this is where we're coming from. This is where our information is based on. So I hope you can appreciate that and also use that moving forward when you have conversations with anyone else as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Umar. Did you have any other comments or questions before I let you go?
I'm good, actually. I just logged in to answer Leah's question. That was it.
That's very kind of you, sir. Thank you. You can hang up now. Guys, Umar said something very important, and I always say this. Always consider the source of advice or feedback. This applies to all aspects of your life. If someone's giving you advice or feedback, always consider where it's coming from. Would you switch places with that person? If the answer is yes, you should take the advice. If the answer is no, I leave it to you. Okay, I believe we did have one more individual. I think he left. Sorry, mate. Oh, actually, you're here. Perfect. All right, this will be the last one, and then we'll call it a day. Hassan, thank you very much for waiting. Thank you for your patience. How can I help you?
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for arranging such a amazing session. Okay, so
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
so my question is that I have completed my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from JIK, and then I have completed my master's from IBA.
Congratulations. So what is your question again?
Now, my question is that now I'm searching for PhD program. I'm searching for PhD program which can.
I think you need to unmute your YouTube. Mute your YouTube. I think that might be throwing you off. But please, please proceed, because YouTube has a latency delay. So just forget about YouTube, mute your YouTube, turn down the volume, focus on Zoom. Just the Zoom meeting. So your question. You've graduated with your degree at NGIK. Was it mechanical engineering? And you've also graduated from IBA.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I'm searching for a PhD program which can complement both of those degrees. So is it possible, like I'm looking into data analytics, data sciences, so can I complement or use both of those degrees in my PhD pursuance of a combination of both, or just I have to stick to one of the programs, like my MBA only or my bachelor's only?
Okay, so you've got a bachelor's in mechanical, you've got a master's in business administration from IBA.
Yeah.
You want to focus on data analytics. Now, while this does not seem like the most conventional method to get into data analytics, I do believe that you could paint a story, you could paint a picture of how you were able to utilize your best skills, everything that you've gained out of your experience from mechanical engineering and from your business administration degree, and apply it to data analytics. I think that a PhD, again, now I will let, if you reach out to me after, I will consult my brother Umar, who is way well versed in PhD than I am, and I can reach out back to you. But what I will say is, I have a bachelor's in engineering science. My master's is in information systems. Guess what I'm doing? Cybersecurity. So my point is, yes, all of my skills in the past add up and they make for what I'm doing today. You just have to make sure that you can make sense of it. You can convince the admissions committee that your experience and the specific courses in your undergraduate degree and the specific courses in your IBA degree complement your program that you're applying to. And it is up to you to paint that picture. It might not be as straightforward and easy as if you had a bachelor's in information systems or data analytics, but it is certainly doable. Here's the thing. A master's in business administration, it's something that complements anything that you do, I think, just based on how it promotes your managerial skills and how it promotes your profile as an individual who is able to perform in the world of business. I think this is going to be a very custom approach. I'm going to say something that was said to, I believe, Maliha. It depends on the professor that you apply to, the school that you apply to, because you're talking about PhD, which means you're going to be doing research. Research is basically done under a professor, right? So if you're able to reach out to a professor, if you're able to utilize your network, whether it's an IBA, whether it's your network from GIK, if there are individuals that can vouch for you and say, this guy knows what he's doing, this guy has certain courses that complement his degree in data analytics, and if you can paint a picture of what your final goal looks like and then backtrack from there, I think it's doable. It's doable. I won't say it's not doable. It's doable. It depends on how well you can paint the picture. And I think I'm happy to talk more about this offline. Again, I will reach out to Umar, who's offline now, and then get an answer to see what he can add to this. So reach out to me afterwards. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Just one more question. Can you answer regarding recommendation letter, like how can we tailor our recommendation letter, or any specific tips which you want to give regarding it?
Yeah, I would say make a letter of recommendation easy for your professor. In other words, give them a draft of everything that you've accomplished. Ask them how they would like you to present your experience to them. If you go to your professor and you just give them a piece of paper which has a letter of recommendation on it and just say, excuse me, sir, could you sign this? That might be slightly, slightly offensive. So what I would do if I were you is I would go to the professor and say, here's everything that I've worked on, here are all the grades I've received. I would really love for you to give me a letter of recommendation. Would it help you if I present to you with a number of bullet points, or would it help you if I give you a draft? Give them an option, make life easy for them, but approach them with the sense of, it's they're the ones recommending you, so they get the final say. So I would say, give them typically a bullet point list of all the experience and all the plus points that you want to highlight in your letter of recommendation based on the program that you're applying for. And then you may be able to draft this letter of recommendation. Don't go to the internet copy pasting stuff. It's okay to get an idea. It's okay to get an idea of how it is structured, but it's just showcase your unique self. Look at the program, look at what kind of students make it to that program, backtrack from there. For example, if the typical profile of a student who applies for that program has a certain GPA, has certain courses, has certain grades, has certain curriculars, then make a note of those, see how many of those are synonymous with your profile, make those into bullet points, add them to your letter, and then have that letter approved or signed by your professor. So in that way, you're working backwards from what has already worked for other people, and now you are presenting it to that college with the letter of approval and a stamp from a very qualified professor of yours. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the guidance. I will work for it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. All right. I think we're good. I'm going to let you go, Hassan. Allah Hafiz. And I think we are good. I think we had a good session today. Again, tune in next Sunday for another topic. There are a couple in my mind right now, but what we will be discussing in the future at a point is we will discuss scholarships, we will discuss career, we will discuss resume building, we will discuss, we may have specific sessions on how to write a personal statement, we will discuss how to apply for jobs and how to get the best results out of your jobs, we will discuss networking, we will discuss soft skills, and that's just the beginning. We have a lot. There's a lot that I need to go over with you guys. And once we've covered school and career, there are things outside of that, like business and investments and stuff like that, that we can delve into at a later time. That may be for a broader audience. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all got something out of this. If there's anything that you think I should talk about, hit me up and let me know. Thank you and goodbye.